Hello, this is Marilyn from Marilyn's on 5th Avenue South. We're going to talk about clothing care, garment care. I just wanted to continue with another thing that people ask me all the time about, and that's pilling. And that's something that has to do with the fibers rubbing against each other. It traditionally happens more in knitwear. Okay, not as much in cotton as it does in other fabrications. And I brought out a few cottons here to show you that. But that t-shirts and stuff, we don't see too much pilling in our t-shirts. But we do when we start to get into the knitwear, okay, when we start knitting rather than weaving. And that's one of the things that causes it. A lot of times pilling was caused because we were mixing one type of fiber with another type of fiber. That definitely made it pill because they're two aliens. But now with micro fiber, which means, for instance, if we're going to put a linen and a stretch together, instead of just putting the two different, well, they couldn't do that anyway, they couldn't put it together, but we split the linen and we split the stretch and we do it like that. And now that's one thread. So that has helped a lot with it. But wherever you're going to see friction, whether in mostly a lot of times it can be in wools and things, is that it's going to be in knitwear. And that's one of the things here. I brought some to show you. Now, some knitwear is not, notice the weave on this, it's far enough apart, so the friction is a little less. It does matter. Quality of the product does matter. So the less expensive something's going to happen, that's going to be it. Though I had a quality piece that I got, a knitwear top. I think I wore it a few times, and it had a lot of pilling that had started on this time. And I was really surprised. So it's one of the things when I go back, I'm going to ask them about, because I'm going to want to know why something not worn, even if it had friction, I think it was overdoing it on the pilling. You can do things to help yourself out with the pilling. When you wash it, you can turn it inside out, and you also can use your gentle cycle. This is another good thing. I wouldn't put it with heat. I would also hang things as much as possible, which you know I already like to do anyway, if you saw the first part of this video. Anyway, I like to do that. Also, the other one that I like is to sort. When you're doing your laundry, it's really important when you're talking about things like pilling, color running and everything, fabrications, is to sort your laundry. But what I do is I do kind of fabrics together and definitely colors. For instance, I wouldn't do towels with a silk. So if you can keep to a lot of that, you will reduce the problems with your clothing, not to mention the longevity of your clothing. The other one the people ask me, and I think if I didn't put this in this video, there'd be a mutiny. How about spots, guys? Okay. Well, I'll talk about spots a lot because I have a good success rate because my mother taught me what to do. So that's probably why. But the second thing to that is that the faster you get to the spot, the quicker you can. And my first thing is the minute if I'm in a restaurant or wherever I am, I jump up from the table and make a beeline for the bathroom. And I start with cold water. Cold water immediately starts to stop the stain from doing bad things. So one of the things you want to do is as fast as you can get to the stain is always better. It's like an emergency hospital. The faster you get there, the better it is that you attack it. So one of the things that's a really good idea is to identify a stain. I know my mother used to tell me in dry cleaning, when they come in and they have an oil stain, that's terrific because dry cleaning works really well on oil stains and it takes it out. So that's one of the things to remember. But you need to identify the stain. That'll help you do it a lot. And you can also do that sometimes by getting the fabrication off of the label on the clothing. And that helps a lot too. For instance, if it's a poly or something else. You can blot the stain, which I do, blot it to take any moisture out of it as much as possible. But let's not start rubbing quite yet unless you have a reason to rub it. If you're rubbing, I have done toothbrush. My mother had the stained toothbrush that she used to use with plain water first. Then the other thing I would suggest is let it sit. If you're going to do it, if you finally get to the laundry stage after you've pre-spotted your emergency thing, you can put it on, and there's a lot of mixtures you can do that you can put on a spot beforehand. You can mix a little soap, okay, and you can directly put it right on the stain, and you can brush it with a little toothbrush and let it sit. And then do it again with your regular laundry. And that's a nice way to do a lot of spots or pre-spotting. That's what I do. And the other one is cold water is such a key for stains because you don't want to set a stain with hot water. Because even there, I know you want to keep that heat away from a stain for sure. So cold water when you wash it, and all of these new detergents can definitely work with cold water. As I told you about the oil stains, but another tip is protein stains. That's the blood. That's anything that has to do with organic kinds of things. You need to use an enzyme cleaner, a detergent for your laundry. And what is an enzyme? You're looking for something on the barrel that says bio-based, bio-based or plant-based. And if you have this in your repertoire, this is going to take out a lot of stains, which you've already put your cold water on because of an emergency, and that would be a good one to do. The other thing is for grass stains, you can use white vinegar. Okay. And my mother had a book about white vinegar. You can do a lot with, she was giving herself facials with white vinegar, and she had the most gorgeous skin you ever saw. So I have the book if anyone has any questions about the facials. The other one is you can mix for whites, and I found this was new. I didn't know. Hydrogen peroxide is really cool if you have white shirts or something. And what I would do is put it in a sprinkle, and I would just spritz it on, and that would help. And, you know, that's really good. Hydrogen peroxide is really good because a lot of times people brush their teeth with it to whiten their teeth. And the other one is for tough stains. You can create a paste with baking soda, and you can rub it on there, and you can leave it there, and then you can wash it as usual. So those are some really good ideas about stain, and there are probably even more that you can find online. But the key is I would remember about stains is get to it as fast as possible. And second of all, pre-treat it, and then wash as usual. So I think that's a good one. I know it. If you have any questions, you know who to call. And the last one, well, probably the best one of all, and has a lot to do with keeping your clothing for a long, long time, is let's talk about storage. Now, I'm not talking about the storage that's going to be in your closet with stuff that you're going to wear a lot. But I said I'm talking about a storage, for instance, when you're changing seasons from winter to summer. I'm going to tell you right now, the key to keeping summer clothing nice is to wrap it or leave it hung. I leave my summer clothing hung. You could, if you want to cover it up, but not plastic. I would cover it up with garment bags made of fabric. That would be your best bet. The reason we're not doing as much closing of items as they are is because what we're really worried about, and why we do sealed containers and other things that I'm going to show you here, is moths. I don't know what it is, but I get them all the time, and it isn't like I'll put on a sweater and I know exactly what happened. So I want to make sure that you understand that the rules for putting wools away is a little bit more strict than it is for cottons. And not only that, the cottons don't last as long as the wools, so consequently most of us don't have that need to store them. But anyway, some of this can be used for the exact this. I thought I would start with some suggestions. One of the greatest suggestions is when you go to store things, you don't want to fold them in such a way. Okay, do you see what's going to happen here? In fact, there is one. See this crease? All right, so what I'm suggesting you do is, let's say I want to put this sweater away. It's going to look a little funny in the box, okay, but we want to do it. So what I would do is, now I don't want seams in the middle of this sweater, okay? All right, so I'm going to do this. You're not going to have the tag to contend with. And I'm just going to fold it at the sleeve line. Okay, so now in your head, you can see there isn't going to be much here. This is going to be right by where the seam is. There isn't going to be much that we're going to do here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this. See? And now there won't be any seams. Okay, so you can get an idea. You can do this with almost anything if you keep that in mind. Another thing you can do, and I really do want to talk about, when I went into hats, and we got our own boxes and we were packing hats, I realized that the tissue I was using for my hats, that wasn't the same as what I was getting with the tissue that was sent to me in the boxes from Philip Tracy. So I went out and I found out that it's an antacid type tissue. It's one of the reasons here we don't wrap any of our clothing here in the fancy labels and all of that stuff. It's because I want this type of a tissue. Another thing you can do, if you really, okay, is you can actually wrap this. in the tissue, and I would still roll it. See? And that's also nice to do with the tissue. Now, that's one of the reasons why we don't have you using a lot of plastic. Be careful with plastic when you do storage. I have a very sad story to tell you. When I went to get married and I was engaged, both my sisters had worn this beautiful linen dress. And I was ready to wear it too, and I thought I was just so excited. And come to find out, when we opened up the box, the dress had completely shrunk up. And one of the reasons was when he steamed it, he didn't let it dry. And he put it in, and it created a steaming machine, and it shrunk the dress. And I was brokenhearted, and I wore a wedding dress, but I wasn't excited. So we here, when we steam stuff in the store, we absolutely, I don't allow anybody to ship it until the next day. I want to make sure that doesn't happen to you. So it is important when you're thinking about selling your stuff and cleaning before. So make sure that things are dry when you're packaging them. Okay, on bins. There's two good ways if you're going to pack in a bin. This is not a good example, okay, because this opens. But the ones that if you do the storage are the ones that are clamped on the top. And this is really good to do that. And I don't know about you, but you know those plastic bags, and I think you can probably buy them. The ones that the blankets and the pillows come in, you know, they have the snap. Don't throw those away. Those are perfect to put in sweaters and stuff. That'll keep out the moths and anything that you need there. So if you're going to pack, that's always a preferred way, and it's easier to stack it to do that one. So that's good for that one. My comment on that, and I mentioned the cloth bags for putting it over so that your things can breathe inside. The other one I wanted to tell you about was shoes. You don't want to miss that. Shoes need 48 hours. You have to let these things dry out inside, especially stuff like this. But I'm not going to say especially stuff like this, because every shoe you have, I have shoes that have lasted me well, and I know if I wore a shoe every day, it was gone in months. So I'm going to strongly suggest that you remember that. And then how do you store those? I know a lot of you store them in the box. Well, that's okay, but I would let them stay overnight before I put them in the box to let them get air, and then put them in, or wait 48 hours if you really want to be technical and put in the box. Otherwise, you can actually store them on shelves, and that's the way I do mine, or you can do them in cloth bags. That would also be okay, but in any case, I want these shoes to dry out before you're putting them in a concealed confinement. In fact, I found these little shoes that we just started getting in. These have little butterflies for kids. But this is not a bad idea if you want to keep your shoes in bags. You can see right through it, this material. And I'm sure you can get that done if you really like it. I don't know if you can buy them, but I'm sure we can get that. You can get that type of a screened in. These are some of the things that we talked about with storage. The other one I want to point out to you is that if you're going to do some long time storage, or you have an area or something, you're going to need a control environment, and cedar is really still the best, or mothballs is the best for that, and that would be the best. I would tell you about firs, but since they're not in vogue these days, I could tell you that firs definitely up north don't have to be stored, but they definitely down here have to be stored if you're planning on wearing them, because it literally will rot out the leather of that. And we had an example of that, because if these things are not stored in proper environments, they can perish very quickly. Anyway, this is Marilyn from Marilyn's in Naples, Florida, and absolutely this was my pleasure to tell you how to take care of clothes. So if you have any questions, you know who to call. Thank you.